Okay, Oak Rovers, this is a video that's going to help you with section 8.1.1 from Algebra Connections. And the section is called Introduction to Factoring Quadratics. So if I look at the first problem, here's what it says. Review what you know about products and sums below. And then we'll look at problem A. Problem A says, write the area of a rectangle at right, which is this rectangle right here, as a product and sum. Remember that the product represents the area found by multiplying the length and the width, while the sum is a result of adding the areas inside the rectangle. Now, if you've forgotten how to do this, we did this back in chapter 5 of this book, and I think it was 5.1.2, where you wrote different rectangles as products and sums. So that's what you're going to do for the first problem. You just have to write this rectangles of product and sum. For part B, what they're asking you to do is to make a generic rectangle to multiply 6x minus 1 times 3x plus 2. And then you have to write that. It's already written as a product, so you have to write that as a sum after you multiply that out. Problem number 2, the process of changing a sum to a product is called factoring. Can every expression be factored? That is, does every sum have a product that can be represented with the tiles? Investigate this question by building rectangles with algebra tiles for the following expressions. For each one, write the area as a sum and as a product. If you cannot build this rectangle, be prepared to convince the class that no rectangle exists, and thus the expression cannot be factored. So this is how you're going to build these rectangles. You'll use your bigger tiles down here in the bottom left. They're going to be your x squareds, your y squareds, and your xy's. They're going to go in the bottom left-hand corner. Your unit tiles are going to go in the upper right-hand corner, way up here. These are all my units up here. Then my x tiles and my y tiles will be either in the bottom right-hand corner or in the upper left-hand corner. You're going to want to build them like that because if you do that, it's going to really connect with the rest of the chapter. So get used to building your rectangles with the bigger tiles down here in the bottom left and then your unit tiles up in the upper right. Okay? And see if you can make all those. I'll give you a little hint. You may not be able to write all those as products and sums, or you might not be able to factor all these and build a generic rectangle. The third problem is this. It says, work with your team to find the sum and product for the following generic rectangles. Are there any special strategies you discovered that can help you determine the dimensions of the rectangle? Be sure to share these strategies with your teammates. So when you do these problems, here's the way I would do it. I always look at my bottom row and I try and think, what can I factor, or what do these two things have in common with each other? Well, I have a 6x squared and a 15x. So if I look at those, I know that I can factor, they both have an x in common. This is x times x, or x squared, and this just has 1x. And 6 and 15 both have a factor of 3. So I can factor a 3x out of this bottom row. Now, to find what I have here, I know that my area of this rectangle is 6x squared. And the length of this, or this length right here, is going to be 3x. So what times 3x gives me a product of 6x squared? And I need another x, and 3 times 2 is 6, so it's got to be 2x. Now, to find this length up here, I know that this length is 2x, and my area is 2x. So I know that I have to multiply that by positive 1. So this is going to be 3x plus 1. That's the dimension of this side. Now to find this length right there, I'm going to look at this rectangle. I know that this dimension is 3x. I know my area of this rectangle is 15x. So I know that 3x times what is 15x? And the answer is going to be positive 5. So when I'm doing that, I know that has to be positive 5. So the dimensions, or if I want to write this as a product, I'm going to write 3x plus 1 times 2x plus 5. And that's what I did right there. So that's writing this rectangle as a product. You have to do the other two when you do your classwork. This is what I want you to do it at home, and while you're working on this, I want you to do the other two problems. Number 4. While working on problem 8.3, Casey noticed a pattern with the diagonals of the generic rectangle. However, just before she shared her pattern with the rest of the team, she was called out of class. The drawing on her paper looked like the diagram below. Can you figure out what the two diagonals have in common? So the two diagonals Casey's talking about is this diagonal right there, the 2x and the 15x, and the other diagonal is the 6x squared and the 5. What I want you to do is see if you can find the relationship between this diagonal and the other diagonal over there. That's going to be the key to factor all the quadratics we do in this chapter. If you're able to see this connection and you're able to pick it up, or this connection that Casey found right here is going to be the reason we're able to factor quadratics the way we do in this chapter. So see if you can figure that out. We'll talk about it tomorrow in class if you're unable to find it. But try and do the best you can to see if you can figure out what the relationship is between the two diagonals. Then number 5, does Casey's pattern work always? Verify that her pattern works for all 2x2 generic rectangles in problem 8.3. So you have to go back to problem 3 and see if Casey's pattern works for all those generic rectangles. It says, then describe Casey's pattern for the diagonals of a 2x2 generic rectangle in your learning log. Now, I'm not expecting you to write a learning log, but I do want you to answer problem 5 by describing the pattern that Casey found for the diagonals of a 2x2 rectangle. Okay? So that's what your classwork is, and that's what I expect you to have done by the time you come to class tomorrow. In class, we're going to work on the homework section, which in this chapter is going to be our problems number 6 through 11. And I don't think there's any Khan Academy videos or exercises for this chapter. So in class tomorrow, you'll be working on numbers 6 through 11. And then if you get those done, then you can start up on 8.1.2. Hopefully this video helped. Make sure you get problems 1 through 5 done and done well by the time you come to class tomorrow. See you tomorrow in class.